Every night she saw him in her dreams. His eyes, the warmth of his smile, the way he reached for her hand. But in her waking life, he was nowhere to be found. She had long accepted that maybe he was just a figment of her imagination, until a stranger appeared on a rainy evening, tapping her on the shoulder and whispered words that would turn her world upside down. "You're the girl." Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I had always believed that dreams were just a quiet rebellion of the mind, fleeting images and faces that made you wake with a smile or a shiver. But for the past 6 months, my dreams had been relentless, persistent, almost alive. Each night, he was there, always the same man, tall, with dark, unruly hair that fell slightly into his eyes, and a smile that made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I never knew his name. I never knew why he existed only in my dreams. During the day, I tried to keep my life ordinary. I worked at a small bookstore tucked into the corner of our bustling city street. The scent of old pages and fresh coffee became my comfort. I told myself that maybe this yearning, this ache in my chest, was just loneliness masquerading as fate. Friends would call me whimsical, or sometimes, I imagined, delusional. But in those quiet moments between shelving books or arranging the new arrivals, I could almost feel him beside me, like a whisper on the breeze. I lived alone in a tiny apartment that overlooked the skyline, the city lights flickering like distant stars. Nights were the worst. When I lay in bed, waiting for sleep, my heart would thrum in anticipation, knowing he would come. And when he did, it was like stepping into a memory I had never lived. Sometimes I would wake crying, other times laughing, clinging to the last moments of his presence. One Thursday evening, the rain was heavy, drumming against the windows of my apartment, painting the streets with shimmering reflections. I had stayed late at the bookstore, trying to distract myself with work, but my thoughts were stubbornly fixed on the familiar stranger. I pulled my coat tight around me and hurried along the slick sidewalk, my umbrella doing little to stave off the icy drizzle. Every step felt heavy, but there was a strange pull in my chest, a feeling I couldn't ignore. And then it happened. I had just turned the corner onto the narrow street that led to my apartment building, my keys trembling in my hand. The night was quiet, too quiet, and that's when I felt it, a tap, soft, almost hesitant, on my shoulder. My heart leapt into my throat. I spun around, and there he was. Not in my dreams, not blurred or distant, but right in front of me, soaked from the rain, his eyes locking onto mine as if he had been searching for me all along. And before I could even catch my breath, he whispered, almost reverently, "You're the girl." The words hung in the air like a fragile thread, trembling between us, and I could barely move. My chest felt tight, my heart hammering against my ribs, as if it recognized him before my mind could. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, droplets sliding down his jaw, and yet all I could focus on were his eyes, those eyes I had seen every night, now burning into mine with a familiarity that was impossible and undeniable at once. Who are you?" I stammered, my voice cracking despite my attempt to sound calm. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my keys. He took a step closer, cautious, careful, as though I were a delicate thing he might shatter with the wrong touch. "I'm someone who's been looking for you," he said softly. "I've been trying to find you, and I think I finally have." I blinked rapidly, trying to reconcile the image before me with the countless nights of dreams. Every detail matched. The tilt of his smile, the way his hands curled at his sides, the warmth that seemed to radiate from him even through the rain. And yet, how could this be? Dreams were supposed to be illusions. This was flesh and blood, and my brain refused to process it. My mind raced. Was this a joke? A prank? Or worse, had I finally lost my mind completely? But there was something in his voice, a weight, a sincerity that made my doubts tremble and retreat. "The dreams," I whispered. You were in my dreams." A shadow of a smile touched his lips, gentle, almost tender, like he had been waiting for me to say it. Yes, every night. I could feel the tears starting to burn in my eyes, but I swallowed them, afraid to let them fall in front of him. I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions. Why? How? Who are you really? But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just stared, frozen, my pulse echoing in my ears like the pounding of the rain. He reached out, hesitantly, not touching, just letting his hand hover near mine. "I know this is overwhelming," he admitted, "but I need you to trust me, just for a moment. I can explain everything, but please, don't walk away." And that's when I realized I wanted to trust him. I didn't know why, but there was a pull in my chest, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, something that had been growing inside me long before he even existed outside my dreams, something that had been waiting for him. I took a cautious step forward, my rain-soaked shoes squelching against the pavement, my hand trembling so much it almost touched his. "I don't understand any of this," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the pattering rain. Why me?" He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving mine, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to the two of us. "Because," he said, his voice steady now, filled with a strange certainty that made my chest ache, "you've always been the one I was meant to find, and now I finally have." The rain blurred around us, turning the street into a world of shimmering lights and reflections, and in that moment, I felt the impossible begin to feel real. But just as I opened my mouth to speak again, a sudden noise from the alley behind us made him tense. His gaze flicked back, alert, and my heart jumped. Something, or someone, was approaching. And then, just like that, the spell of the moment shattered, leaving me standing in the rain, terrified, exhilarated, and more curious than I had ever been in my life. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed off the wet walls of the alley, snapping me out of the strange, dreamlike haze that had wrapped around us. He tensed, his hand finally brushing against mine, not enough to be contact, just enough to anchor me, and for the first time, I noticed a flicker of fear in his eyes. It was subtle, fleeting, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Go inside," he whispered urgently. "Now." I hesitated, torn between curiosity, disbelief, and the strange, undeniable pull toward him. My instincts screamed caution, but my heart, my foolish, stubborn heart, wanted to stay. Who's coming?" I asked, my voice barely above a tremble. He shook his head slightly, refusing to answer, his eyes scanning the alley like he was anticipating something I couldn't see. "I'll explain everything, I promise, but we don't have time here. Please." His tone was desperate, pleading, and it made me feel something I hadn't felt in years: trust, raw and instinctual, the kind that goes beyond logic. I took a step forward, then another, letting him lead me through the rain-slick streets toward a small, dimly lit cafe that seemed impossibly cozy in the middle of the night. Inside, the warmth hit me first. The smell of roasted coffee beans, the faint hum of conversation, the soft amber glow of hanging lights, and I felt my muscles finally relax. But even in the safety of the cafe, my heart wouldn't stop hammering. He gestured for me to sit, sliding into the booth opposite me, water dripping from his coat onto the floor. I noticed the tremor in his fingers, subtle but there, betraying his calm exterior. He looked vulnerable, human, and suddenly all the fears, the doubts, and the questions tangled inside me seemed almost secondary to the sheer intensity of being near him. "Start from the beginning," I demanded, trying to steady my voice. "Who are you? Why are you in my dreams? And why now?" He leaned back, rubbing a hand across his face as if gathering courage. "I've tried to find you for years," he began slowly, voice low and rough with emotion. "Before that, before everything, I thought I had lost you forever." My chest tightened. There was so much in his gaze, in the curve of his jaw, in the way he avoided my eyes and then met them with a sudden intensity. "Lost me? What do you mean?" He hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "There's a lot I need to explain. Dreams aren't supposed to happen the way they did, but with us, they did. You've been the one I've been searching for, long before I even knew you. And now, finally, I've found you in real life. But there are things I haven't told you, things that could make this impossible." I interrupted, my voice urgent, trembling. "Impossible? I don't care about impossible. I needed to see you, to know this wasn't just in my head." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a long moment, it felt like time stopped. His hand reached across the table, finally closing over mine with a gentle, grounding pressure. "I know," he whispered, "and I promise I'll tell you everything. But we have to be careful. Someone is watching, and if they realize we're together..." My stomach dropped, and the cafe suddenly felt too small, too fragile. Someone was after him, or after us. My mind raced with questions, fear, and a strange, growing exhilaration. Every instinct screamed to run, yet every part of me ached to stay, to hear his story, to trust him despite the danger. And just as he opened his mouth to start, the front door of the cafe swung open violently, the bell above it jangling like a warning. Both of us froze, hearts in our throats, and I realized this was only the beginning of something I couldn't have imagined. The cafe door slammed open, letting in a gust of cold air and a man I hadn't seen before, his coat dripping with rain, eyes scanning the room like a predator. My heart lurched, and I instinctively moved closer to him, gripping his hand like a lifeline. He didn't flinch, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice steady but low, carrying a weight I could feel in my chest. The man's gaze lingered on us, and I realized with a sudden, sickening clarity that this wasn't just about our chance meeting. It was about something much bigger, something I wasn't prepared for. But then, instead of an attack, the man paused, studied us, and his eyes softened, almost reluctantly. "I didn't think I'd find you here," he said quietly, and my pulse stuttered. Something about the tone, familiar yet distant, made my mind reel. Before I could ask, he turned and left, disappearing into the rain as silently as he had appeared. My hand, still in his, shook, and he let go only to reach across the table and take mine again, pressing it firmly, grounding me. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he murmured. "It's complicated. More complicated than dreams. More complicated than chance." His eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through the intensity that had haunted me since the moment we met. "Then tell me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Tell me everything." And he did. Piece by piece, he revealed a story I could hardly believe. a life lived in shadows, searching for me across cities, across years, guided by the same inexplicable connection that had brought him into my dreams. He told me about the people who wanted to keep us apart, the moments he had risked everything to find me, the endless nights wondering if I even existed outside his dreams. As he spoke, I felt every word sink into my soul. The longing, the hope, the fear, it all made sense now. The dreams had been a warning, a guide, a promise, and now, finally, the impossible had become real. When he finished, the silence between us was profound. My fingers tightened around his, and I realized that the ache I had carried for so long, the yearning for someone I couldn't name, was finally gone, replaced by something steadier, something tangible, him. "I don't know how to thank you," I whispered, my eyes brimming with tears, "for finding me, for never giving up." He smiled, the same smile from my dreams, and it was brighter, warmer, more real than I could have imagined. "No thanks needed," he said softly. "We were meant to find each other, always." Outside, the rain began to lighten, the storm passing as though it had never been. And in that small cafe, surrounded by the hum of ordinary life, I felt extraordinary, alive, seen, and undeniably, irrevocably connected to the man who had been my dream, my hope, my soulmate. For the first time in my life, I believed that some things weren't just chance, weren't just dreams, they were destiny. And as I leaned across the table, our foreheads touching, I knew I would never let him go. Because finally, after all the waiting, all the longing, the words I had waited to hear every night of my life were real. We had found each other,